Hello, Sounders. It's Mick to talk of Reading and Kusini Yengi and our manager's pork pies. But let's start off with Reading, of course. And I want to talk about momentum for a moment. I was thinking about it all week, really, before the Reading game. It's an important mood or phenomenon to have with you, momentum. Always was in warfare, and it certainly is in sport. And I think, really, actually, if you think about it, in our lives, generally, we all need a bit of momentum in life to have success, to feel good. The feeling that the gods are with you. You've got certain qualities that give you an edge over everyone else. It could simply be called optimism, the belief that you've got what it takes to make your mark. However you define it, having momentum is a positive you want to carry with you. And Pompey have started the season's campaign with a fine series of friendlies in which they did what they had to do competently, solid, and then a solid performance at Oxford that they followed up the friendlies with. On the first, and that was the first significant day of competitive football. But in that way that we know about Pompey, we know so well, momentum flew up in the evening air like a bad fart against Reading in the Carabao Cup on Tuesday night. Sorry to present that image, Sounders. But we're all a bit surprised and offended by the experience of our side, full of hopefuls, getting well beaten at home by Reading, whom, of course, we had in a friendly beaten so easily a few days before. Because we had momentum. The trains coming down to Portsmouth were packed with smiley, hopeful faces. The Milton end was opened up to Pompey, for goodness sake. It never was intended that that was going to happen. A fixture which would have been virtually ignored, let's put it that way, by the vast majority of Pompey fans. And yet it drew over 15,000 to Fratton Park on Tuesday night. And then we did a Pompey. Of course, there are mitigating factors, my lad. We made 10 changes from the Saturday game up at Oxford. We wanted to protect those Oxford winners. And John Mousinho needed to give minutes to most of the side he picked. Some were coming back from long-term injury. Some were new players who had to be looked at to see their condition and needed to feel part of Pompey as soon as possible and settle into our squad. And some were simply players who are important members of the squad, but not in line at the moment for starts in games. So it was obvious that we presented Reading with a side that hadn't played together before, and some of whom hadn't yet got a recognised role, a significant role in the side. It was always going to be a disjointed learning experience. And that's what it was. It turned out to be worse than that. Because having started reasonably well, we seemed stunned by conceding a goal. Admittedly, the first in this campaign, but players and crowd, to be fair, couldn't seem to recover. they gave away a second and the game had gone. Just as Tommy Cooper said. Just like that. I have to say, I'm convinced the first goal was offside. From the start, I was in line with the lino, the linesman, who got that, in my opinion, wrong. It was offside. But we didn't seem to make any fuss about it. No one seemed to complain. Maybe we thought, well, you know, it's a friendly, we'll let it go. I don't know. It wasn't a friendly. It was a Carabao Cup game, so it couldn't have been that. But it doesn't matter. You battle back from that, normally. But we got more disjointed and frantic as players were swapped into the game. But the damage had long been done. It was a terrible anticlimax when at the end of it all, along came a young boy from the academy and gave everyone something to talk about, something to enjoy. He scored his first forever memorable goal for Pompey into the Fratton end. So well done, Theo Singer. Dozens and dozens of Pompey strikers over the years would envy you a debut like that. But it was nonetheless a disappointing night. Not least for so many of the Pompey players out there who've seen their chance of Pompey first team minutes disappear in a Carabao fart. Sorry, I can't stop using the word now. But it is a serious problem now for those players, many of them, to persuade John Mousinho and his team that they're worthy of selection, and they'll have to now do it, I suppose, by coming off the bench. So worth having a look, I think, at individuals, the performances of the team we watched start the game against Reading. Ben Killip at the back, he played a lot better than when we last saw him last season, when he had a really difficult time. He didn't seem to me to be to blame for the goals. But they were, as I say, the first one I'm convinced was offside, but they were scrappy goals, and I didn't see his involvement clearly. I haven't been able to watch it again. But I don't think he was really to blame for either of the goals. He was very busy. He had a lot to do. His distribution was mostly good, particularly his diagonals to the left. Towards Farrell and Minhyuk. I thought they were good clearances by and large, and he did okay. He seemed to be busier than I would have liked him to be. Not in terms of attacking the Reading attack, but his own defence, making maybe more use of him than they should have done. I don't know. Zach Swanson did okay at right back. In fact, I read one or two people saying that they thought he was the star of the Pompey show, but I'm not quite sure about that. I didn't think he was his swashbuckling best, and he didn't always certainly blend effectively with Devlin up the right flank, which was disappointing, because these two boys really know one another well. But the right flank rarely penetrated and troubled Reading throughout the night. Jacob Farrell, it was interesting to see him, because we've seen virtually nothing of him, and it's been a bad injury and a long recovery. And we did see determination in the way that he approached the game, and no little skill from Farrell, constantly attempting to bring Min Hayek into the games, and there was some enjoyable interplay, I thought, with John Swift inside him, which felt hopeful and positive. But he really looks like a player who needs game time, and it highlights the failure I've mentioned to go deeper into the cup competition, which would have given him just that, and I don't know how he's going to get that now. Ibane Boat was calm, but I wouldn't say commanding. He's obviously a talent, but he's newly back into the game, isn't he? And he was unable to dominate his the Reading attack as he and his manager would wish and expect of him. He's another young man with obvious need of minutes, but didn't disappoint. Hayden Matthews did a lot of good things, but not with crispness somehow. Like Boat, he was a bit laboured at times, and I think that his was the error that led to the second decisive goal. He looked mortified about it. He felt he'd been fouled, and he appeared to be supported by John Mousinho on the touchline, who was incensed with the roughed up treatment he'd got from the centre forward, whose name I don't know any of the Reading. I haven't bothered with Reading names, to be honest with you. But it just looked like sloppy clumsiness to me from Hayden Matthews, the sort of thing that you wouldn't expect of him when he's in his stride later on in the season. I think he'll make it as a starter at some point in the season. He's got a lot to offer, but it didn't really show through against Reading. I thought John Swift was our best player in the losing first half of the game, after which he came off. But he constantly tried to knit together down the left-hand side of the pitch, prompting Min Hayek and working with Farrell. Having said that, we were out-battled in midfield, largely because so little stuck up front. It was constantly coming back, and we were a bit outnumbered. Luke Leroux, to come on to the other midfielder, got a noticeable ovation from the crowd when he was subbed off. He already created a certain popularity for himself. And that's good. That's nice. I thought he did okay, but he didn't necessarily dominate the midfield, and as he would have expected and wanted. He was just a bit off the pace at times. But he's got a tackle in him, and he's got a good motor, he's got a good engine. He got booked for a professional foul, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more to come from Luke Leroux. And there's definitely there's more to come from Mark Kozhnowski. One or two lovely moments of skill and promise, but not nearly enough for him. He really found it difficult to get into the game and affect it significantly. Maybe just didn't feel he quite had the role that he wanted or expected. I don't know. Maybe just feeling his way into a game after a long period out. It wasn't the best we'll see of Mark Kozhnowski. I'm absolutely certain about that. And Yang Min Hyuk, I'm saying his name without really understanding whether that is how you say it, Sounders, because no one's told me, and I haven't heard anyone grappling with it. So I'm saying Yang Min Hyuk quietly. But he had a lot of ball wide left. He's a small, a slight young man, and he has the classic problem, if he's going to break into men's football, of developing the strength and the nous required to allow him time to take control on the ball and to show off the amazing skills he can conjure up. I mean, we saw one or two of them last night. He's a little magician, but that's not enough. That's not enough to make a successful footballer. He had a lot of support against Reading from his team, and more of the ball than any of the other attackers. But he drew, as he's presumably used to already, but he's always going to get it. He drew a swarm of defenders every time he threatened. And in all honesty, really, brutally, last night he got nowhere. He got one or two shots off, and he's got a shot on him for a small fella. But this is a problem for the coaching team to solve. He's so obviously talented. He so obviously wants to be on the ball. But where is the final product? Thomas Waddingham. It had a really lean night, I thought. He was up against two first team regular centre backs for Reading. I think I'm right in saying the only two. I mean, we made all those changes, but so did Reading. To be fair to Reading, I was convinced. I tried to. I was seeking the information after the game. How many Reading players we'd played against in the friendly? I think not that many, or at any rate that the team that they put out for their first game, in which they got beaten somewhat unluckily apparently up at Huddersfield, there were only two regular. The centre backs were the only two that played in that game. I think I'm right in saying that. If I've got it wrong, Sounders, it's not by that many. But they were two rugged and determined blokes, and they set about Waddingham, refusing to or trying to oppose him turning and running at them. And he had difficulty leading the line with his back to goal. I mean, good experience for him, but frustrating. And frustrating for the team, because the ball kept coming back at them from central attacks too quickly, too easily. Thomas Waddingham's a really promising young footballer, but he didn't have sufficient support around him for laying the ball off, and he never looked comfortable on the night. There were, Sounders, many substitutes who achieved minutes, but I'm only going to pick out one or two of them. Regan Poole, because he looked the best player on the pitch when he came on, and probably was. Andre Dozzell picked up where John Swift left off and worked hard, battled hard. Give him that, but to no real end product. Florian Bianchini was, I thought, the best forward we saw all night. although we do want to see his team, his coaches will want to see clinical finishing from him in there somewhere eventually. And then there's Teo Singer. I've already mentioned him, but why not again? He should have slept well after his goal, shouldn't he? So briefly, two other things that I've noticed in the last few days. Kusini Yengi is having a nightmare up in Aberdeen. I actually sort of tried to watch anyway, both games. They were against Hearts and then Celtic. Tough away to Hearts and then home to Celtic. Tough games for Aberdeen, and for Kusini Yengi they were not great. Pompey fans warmed him, and some of them were really upset that he moved on. But I'm not sure he's that good. Sounders. I will be the first one to hold my hands up if he starts scoring goals at Aberdeen. I will tell you about them. I will remind you of them because you'll probably know. But I will sing his praises, because we like to see players that we've seen a little bit at Fratton Park. We like to see them go on and do good stuff. So I want him to do that, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure that he's going to be able to. I hope he's given the time. I hope he's given the love. We'll see. Finally, our manager who's a bit chastened after the disappointment of Reading, understandably. He would have been pretty angry, actually, that it went the way it did. But I think there were a lot of mitigating factors in terms of the interplay of the side. It was expecting a lot to make 10 changes and expect it to work. But you have to also give it to. I haven't really said it, but I have to give some credit to Reading. I thought they worked their socks off. They worked so hard. They closed down better than us, quicker than us, with more intensity than us. And their midfield had a degree of resilience and power that we didn't. So he will be disappointed, John Mousinho, and he's got to find ways of getting those players up to speed. A lot of them. We can't afford for the 11 or the 10 that are going to make up our bench. We can't afford for them all to not to improve on that performance. But I didn't want to talk about that really about John Mousinho. He'll do his job there. That's fine. I just want to talk about his confession to being what is called these days, or what I call anyway, economical with the truth. Telling the odd porky pie about whether a player is going to be able to, Colby Bishop's the classic, but whether players are going to be out for a length of time or not. I hate that, actually, when players are genuinely injured and it's sort of kept from us. I don't see any point in that at all, but I can see the point in denying your opposition a knowledge about the team that you're going to put out on match day. I do understand that, and if it has to fool the fans as well, fair enough. I get that, but there is a small danger about that, and that is that if John is identified with never telling the truth, then he'll tell the truth sometimes, and people won't believe him. Fans won't believe him. Fans will go, that's just John. You know John. He's having them on. But he's not fooling me. I know what he said isn't true. Well, often it will be, Sounders. it's up to us to be able to work out truth from fiction, and that's the game. That's another game in life's rich tapestry that we enjoy doing, and we'll always have arguments about. But all I would say to John Massigno is, John, don't forget the tale of Pinocchio. And I'll leave it there. Thanks, Sounders. Play out, Pompey.